Hey, what's up? What's good? What's going on? It's Mary Jane. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please like the video. It'd be greatly appreciated from the bottom of my heart, my peeps. Anyways, we're going to be talking about Fear Thy Neighbor, Season 4, Episode 5. Basically, this was a really crazy episode. It was really messed up. It was a horrific episode. And basically it just pissed me off through the whole thing, basically. So anyways, we're going to start off with Linda. She is a widow. Basically, she has 3 kids, 2 daughters and 1 son. One of her daughters is on the show. Her name is Doreen, basically, and her son James, he wasn't around because he went away to prison for about like 8 years or whatever. So basically, Linda was a widow. She didn't have any help at the house. She was a single parent, a single mom trying to raise kids, and there's some things that she didn't know how to do, basically. So there's a guy that lives right across the street from her. His name is Joseph Jackson. They call him Joe for short. Basically, he was just divorced. His wife left him, and she took everything with her, and she took her income as well. So Joe was trying to survive, basically, and he had 2 dogs. And so Joe was the neighborhood handyman. He would go around, mow people's lawns, do Mr. Fix things up around the neighborhood, because there was a lot of single women in the neighborhood. And so basically, him and Linda known each other since 1989. This incident took place in October of 2013, basically. And so basically, Joe and Linda were really good friends, and basically Joe would come over and do all like manly stuff, things that Linda wasn't able to do, like keep up the yard, keep up the gutters, keep up different things that she didn't know how to do, or basically didn't have time to do. And Joe was honored to do it for her, basically, and she would compensate him with money. She would compensate him with companionship, and she would also feed him as well. And so Joe did this with a lot of other people in the neighborhood, but him and Linda were really tight, really cool, basically. And her name is Linda Robinson, I believe. So anyways, Joe was going on hard. Things were happening to Joe. Things were hard for him, basically, trying to make a living, trying to make ends meet. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, him and Linda had a very good relationship. The kids knew, her 2 daughters knew him, and everything was fine and dandy and good, basically. He would ask her for like small money if he needed $10, $20, and basically not only her, but other people in the neighborhood, basically. So anyways, Linda would give it to him, basically. Anything that she could possibly do in her power to help him, she would help him, but to a certain extent, because she has her own family to feed, basically. So anyways, Linda ended up going out one night, and she ended up meeting this guy named Wilbert, and it was love at first sight. And Wilbert moves into Linda's house, and basically that kind of puts Joe on the outs, because Linda doesn't have as much time as she used to have for Joe, like having dinner, having him over, fixing things, because now Wilbert is the man of the house. Now Wilbert is doing everything in the house. He's fixing the house. He's fixing things that are broken. He's the man of the house now, so he's taking control of that. So basically that leaves Joe on the outs, basically. So basically his but any assistance or income that he was receiving from Linda, he cannot count on that anymore, because him and Linda kind of doesn't need his help anymore. So Joe feels like he's been abandoned once again, basically. So he feels on the outs, and he feels like, wow, he still tries to come over and have a relationship with Linda, and tries to have a relationship with Wilbert, but it just doesn't work out. It goes south, basically. So then on this note, so Joe goes around and he's telling other females in the neighborhood that, I think Linda made a bad idea, a bad choice with Wilbert moving him in, and she's dissing me, she don't have time for me. It's like basically I don't exist anymore. So anyways, Linda overhears this conversation, so from that point on she distanced herself from him as well. So basically, Joe is now starting to have a really difficult time surviving, basically. So now he's having yard sales. He's selling his equipment, because basically he's a handyman, so he's selling like his saws, his tools and things like that to pay his bills and to feed him and his dogs. I believe at this time he has 3 dogs or maybe 2 dogs. And so, and he's looking across the street and he's saying that Linda's doing well, basically, and he's doing bad. And basically, he's hitting up people in the neighborhood for cash. He'll do work for cash, basically. So, but, this lady named Jane, she moves in next door, next to Linda, basically. And then Joe introduced himself to Linda. And basically, Joe's name is Joseph Jr. Jackson. And basically, he introduced himself to Jane. Jane thinks that Joe's attractive. She thinks he's good looking. She likes his muscular physique. And she likes, she just likes him, basically. And so Joe ends up moving in with Jane, basically. And, Linda and Wilbur thinks, wow, that's a real quick for her to let this guy move in, basically. But Jane, she is a legal secretary for some big trucking company and some big oil company. So basically, she has an income, a decent income. Basically, they move into like this small ranch size house, maybe 14 to 15 feet. You can take 15 steps across the yard, diagonal, vertical, horizontal, basically, and it's really small, basically. So anyways, there's a little strip between Linda's house and Jane's house where it's like a little island, basically. And Wilbur, when he drives his truck back and forth, his tire goes onto this strip, which is grass, and Joe tells him not to do that. And Jane complains about it as well. But basically, Jane does not own this property. She's a renter. Basically, Linda owns her property, basically. So if Jane had a problem, I believe she should have called the landlord and talked to the landlord about this so the landlord can take actions instead of the actions that Jane and Joe took, basically. So basically, Joe's in the basement. He takes a plaque wood and he nails into this plaque wood, and he faces it upside down. So when Linda or Wilbur are leaving the house, they can write on this plaque and basically flatten their tires, basically. But that doesn't happen. Basically, Linda almost steps on this plaque. And if you step on a rusty nail or a dirty nail, you can get lockjaw, or you can get any type of like disease from there. That's why you get a tetanus shot, basically, and you get these shots so that doesn't happen to you. So that's really serious because it could be life-threatening at sometimes as well. So anyways, Wilbur picks up the plaque and he throws it at Joe. That's what they show on the show, basically. And then Joe goes, well, it ain't over yet. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to take care of business. And basically, so now this really begins a feud between these two. And so anyways, it's crazy. So then at this point, Jane is in love with Joe. Joe's in love with Jane, basically. And I hate that she shares the same name as me, because she is a complete deranged moron, in my opinion. And so anyways, Joe creates a lot of noise because Jane has a dog, and then Joe brings his 3 dogs, I believe, over to her house when he moves in. So now you have these dogs that are constantly barking, and the houses are right next to each other. They're not far apart. So basically there's a wood fence, basically. And so Joe would throw the ball at the wood fence, and the dogs would go towards the wood fence to retrieve the ball and bring it back to Joe. So basically throwing that hard little small wood ball, like if you were playing handball, basically, on this wood, it disturbs Linda and Wilbur, basically. But they don't even complain. They don't even say nothing about it. They can't even be outside and enjoy their backyard because you got 4 dogs that are out here barking, and then this dude throwing the fucking ball at the wall like an idiot and creating more noise when he has 4 dogs in a small ass house. This house is small. For 4 dogs and 2 people, this motherfucker is too small for that bullshit. Somebody should have called pest control, not pest control. Somebody should have called animal control, basically, at that time and point, because it's just too small. And it has to be annoying because it's right. I mean, these houses are right next to each other. So it's not like Joe's taking these dogs out for walks or he's taking these dogs away from the house. They're constantly in the backyard. So then Joe comes up with a great idea that he wants to breed his dogs with Linda dogs, with Jane's dog, his girlfriend. So basically, Joe starts to breed dogs, and he's breeding dogs because he's thinking that maybe he can make this can be his financial income, basically. So then Jane herself, that's on this show, says that, you know, Joe was breeding dogs, basically, and she said before she knew it, she counted 35 fucking dogs and that small ass property. Could you imagine living next to 35 fucking dogs? Could you imagine? Could you imagine the smell? Could you imagine just how sick it was? Could you imagine the environment of that house with 35 dogs and 2 people? The house was really, really small. It couldn't even been 1,000 feet. It was small. And 35 dogs. And Jane said herself that yes, we had 35 dogs. They didn't sell any dogs. They didn't make any profit off the dogs. So basically, anybody that lives in a house with 35 dogs, the property is like a shoe, is basically a lunatic. Basically, it's crazy. Okay? So animal control should have been over there. The whole neighborhood should have been involved. The neighborhood should have been calling animal control. The neighbors should have been calling the cops. The neighbors should have helped with this problem, because how are they not affected by these 35 dogs that are in the backyard that don't leave the property? Do you know how sick these dogs must have been in that type of environment? There's no air, there's no room. They're all sharing the same bowl, just sharing the same plate. How is he taking them a bath? How is he washing these dogs? How are these dogs getting shots when he doesn't have any money as well? And breeding these 35 dogs is supposed to make his income come up. And he didn't. He kept these dogs. So how did they feed 35 dogs? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. Like, nobody else in the community did anything about this situation. Basically, the person that was affected the most by the situation is Linda and Wilbur, because they live right next door to these crazy motherfuckers. This is what I'm saying. There's crazy people everywhere. Every time you turn around, there's lunatics that you have to be involved with, that you have to just encounter if you're not so wealthy where the next house is a mile away, basically, and you don't have to go into public venues, basically. So anyways, and so it smells so bad. Linda said Jane said herself it smelled so bad. And Wilbert will go to Joe and complain to him about how bad the dog smelled, how dirty it was, how they couldn't even breathe. So Linda and Wilbert, they couldn't have parties in their house to welcome their son, James. Well, it's not Wilbert's son, but Linda's son. He finally came home from jail or whatever, from prison, and they was having a welcoming home party. Basically, they couldn't even eat the cake. They couldn't even celebrate because you hearing 35 dogs barking, and there's nothing but feces and shit all over the fucking place. And Linda describes that you didn't even want to eat at all because all you were breathing, all you would smell is shit. So if Jane and Joe is living in this type of environment, they're not sane. They are mentally ill. They're disturbed. And we have to live around people like this. Maybe not to this extent, but all that feces that Joe and Linda was breathing in, that urine, because how much can they change the urine? How much can they take the trash out? So that was animal abuse 1-on-1, and nobody did anything. You know, Linda didn't even want to complain that much because she didn't want to have a problem, because she didn't want her son to get hurt, and she didn't want her boyfriend to get hurt, because you can tell that these people are deranged. And Jane let it all go on. Jane is the one that said that Joe tried to clean up behind the dogs, but once he would clean it up, it'll come right back because it was too much. There was no space. There was not. So these dogs are breathing in and probably eating their own feces, number one, and getting sick. When one dog is sick, all the dogs are going to get sick because there's no way that you can divide them or separate them. So this is animal abuse. This is animal harm. Jane and Joe wasn't doing anything to help these animals. They was destroying these animals. Even dog shelters don't have these many animals. So you got to think that you got these 35 animals, and probably that was at the time she first counted. This probably was like 40 or maybe even more. So now these dogs are fighting over food. They're fighting over survival. They're fighting over where to sleep. They're fighting for attention. So you know these dogs are already being bred in a dysfunctional and a violent environment because they're going to fight for the food. There's going to be one dog that picks on the other one. well, they're all gonna be fighting. So imagine you living next door to this bullshit. Then Linda finally calls the cops. The cop says that, oh my God, this is disgusting. How did you let this get this bad or whatever? So the cop orders, Joe to clean up. Joe cusses out the cops or whatever, blase in the third, and he gets away with it basically. And nobody else, there's neighbors that are Imad or whatever the fuck his name is. He's on this show and he's talking about, oh, Joe was such a good guy. He loved his dogs. How the fuck he loved them dogs and have him in that small place, living in feces infested and fucking shit and fucking piss. And if one dog vomits or gets sick, they're all gonna vomit and get sick. They're all eating from the same place. Imagine. This is straight bullshit, son. These dogs were tortured living with Joe. They was not in a good place. Joe and Jane was insane motherfuckers that had a property. So anyways, moving forward, the dogs break the fence or whatever, and they attack James, which is Linda's son. So he's able to defend himself against these dogs, basically, and he survives. And it's said in the show, against all odds, like, this would be the realest shit I ever wrote by Tupac's Against All Odds, whatever. He survives, basically. Basically, his prison stunt have him being able to survive this type of situation. So he's able to survive. And basically, Linda calls animal control. Guess what? When you call animal control and a dog attacks, they take the dogs away, basically. Animal control does not take these dogs. Linda and Joe beg animal control and they leave the dogs there. Basically, they leave the dogs there. And I believe Linda should sue the city where she's from and the state for what happened to her and her family, basically, because if there's proof and records of her calling and they didn't do anything about it, and then she can get statements if anybody else did anything, she needs to sue, basically. I don't know if time limitations has run out yet or not, I don't know. But anyways, so then Joe dogs, they start to die. Now Crazy Joe and Crazy Jane believes that these dogs are poisoned. They believe that James and Wilbert are poisoning these dogs. These dogs are poisoned by the environment they're living in. They're living in a feces infested environment. They're not getting shots. They're not getting treatment. Jane says herself on this show that they couldn't afford to test the dogs and see if they were poisoned or anything. They didn't have any money to do that, so they didn't take these dogs to the vet at all. Because if they would have took these dogs to the vet, basically hopefully the vet would have some type of sense to call animal control and say that these dogs are being abused. But no, that didn't happen. And the neighbors didn't do shit about this bullshit anyways. And Linda blames herself for the situation that happened at the end. No, these motherfucker was crazy. And the city was crazy to let this shit go on. Let me do some shit like that. I would be in jail, my friends, my peeps. So anyways, so then moving forward, Joe thinks that James and Wilbur are poisoning the dogs. I don't believe they was poisoning the dogs. I believe that the dogs were poisoned by the environment they was living in. And if anybody probably poisoned the dogs, it was probably either Joe himself to get attention because he was mentally disturbed, basically. And so, anyways, so Joe sees James and Wilbur fixing their car, basically, and they're using antifreeze or whatever. So he believes now that Wilbur and James are poisoning their dog with antifreeze, basically. These dogs are poisoned by breathing in feces 24/7, 7 days a week, not having shots, not being able to be separated, being emotionally disturbed. Because imagine 35 dogs living in a small property like that. These dogs have all types of behavioral issues and mental issues. Dogs are like humans in so many different ways, basically. So Joe and Jane thinks that their neighbors are poisoning their dogs, which I don't believe. And I believe that it would probably be other people in the community would probably do something like that. But I don't believe James and Wilbert poisoned the dogs because they did so much to put up with the situation that they didn't even want to cause drama with this dude, because I don't even know why they didn't move. Maybe they couldn't move. I have no idea. Well, we know Jane and Joe could not move because they had 35 fucking dogs. Unless they was going to buy a farm, where were they going to move to? Or they're going to buy a property that had 30 to 20 acres. So anyways, And then Jane is on the show talking about we was constantly bullied. You bullied them people. You bullied your neighbors with them dogs. You used them dogs as a weapon. You used them dogs as terrorists. Basically from the feces, the shit all over the place. How could you even live like that, Jane? So now, at least on this episode, you get both stories because even Joe is on this show as well. So anyways, so then after that, could you imagine that bullshit? And then this lady Jane talking about, oh, they bullied us, they picked on us, they were so evil. You were evil to treat them dogs like that. You were evil to have all them dogs in that little small property covered with feces, piss, vomit, and everything. So when the dogs started to die, guess what Jane and Joe did? They got some yarn. I don't know, they got some hay basically, and then this is what Jane says. Jane says, Joe didn't bother anybody. Basically, he built a pit in the middle of the yard, and that all the area around the house was free. So he just built a little pit in the middle of the yard. He stuck hay. He stuck all these dogs, at least 20 to 25 dogs, and she was like, it was so hard for the hay to catch fire. It was so hard for the dogs to catch fire. So basically they would be trying day in and day out to set these dogs on fire. So I finally set these dogs on. So it's a stack this big of bodies of dogs with hay that they set on fire. Nobody called the cops. The cops never came. Animal control didn't come at all. And the people in the community are so fucked up. They're so lazy, trifling, dirty motherfuckers. Not to help this lady out at all because they was affected, but she was affected more. And she called the cops. She called animal control, and it just got worse. Fucked up. So anyways, he's burning these dogs. You're going to tell me that motherfucker's not deranged? He's burning these dogs like that in the open. People are breathing this shit in. So you're going to tell me that this guy was cleaning behind these dogs? This guy and this lady were taking care of these dogs? If they're going to burn them in a pit in their fucking yard? Talking about, we didn't disturb anybody around us. Okay, that's one example of the craziness. The other craziness is Jane says that she believed that Joe wasn't suffering from depression because, or anything like that. Basically because, Wilbert and, Linda thinks that he's suffering from depression because he's not bathing, he's not showering. He's probably not bathing and showering because there's no space in that little house. And basically, his looks is deteriorated. His body's deteriorated, basically. Because look how he's living. He's living in a feces. He's living in poison environment. And the dogs are also living in that environment. One-on-one abuse. Where was animal control at? So anyways, from that, this is what Linda says. Linda says that while Joe was picking the dogs up and cleaning after the dogs were dead or whatever, that Joe didn't use gloves. Okay, so now he's handling dead dogs that's been dead for a while and moving them around and cleaning them up or whatever with no gloves on. Tell me, is that person conscious of anything around him? And so basically Joe gets sick, and Joe and Linda believes that he's getting sick because of the poisons from the dog. The dogs were poisoned, and so he must have got some of the poison on him and it got inside of him. No, he was breathing in poison 24/7. He's touching dead dogs basically with no gloves, no mask on, no nothing. Okay? So anyway, so then after that, Joe loses it, and he sees James. He goes up to James and say, James, you better get the fuck out of here. I'm gonna kill you, whatever. And he's pointing a gun. James is not scared at this point. James is like, get out of here with that gun or whatever. And so, Joe ends up shooting James, shoots him in the neck and paralyzed James. So James is paralyzed basically because of Joe. Joe's in jail right now. It doesn't say how much time Joe got, but Joe's in jail. Jane moves 18 months after the incident of the shooting. So basically her son, Linda's son James, is paralyzed from this event, from this crazy motherfucker. I swear they need to file countersuit from every aspect of Texas, because this is fucked up. And this is horrific. I mean, horrific. And then Joe is sitting there on camera because he's in prison talking about, They threaten me. They threaten me and my dogs. You are a low down, dirty motherfucker. And I hope you die in prison. And I hope that fucking bitch Jane, something happens to her motherfucking ass. Because they're fucked up to do that to anybody and think that they were bullied. That is so messed up. And then the way that they treated them dogs. Imagine how them dogs were living. Imagine. And then they burnt the dogs and breathed it in. That shit is so foul to them animals. They used them animals as weapons to terrorize their neighbors. And Joe terrorized Linda because Linda didn't want a relationship with him because she got a man. So he moved next door to her and tortured her with them dogs. And he tortured them dogs and got away with it. And the state of Texas didn't do shit about it. The animal control didn't do shit about it. And the police didn't do shit about it. The community didn't do shit about it. There needs to be class action lawsuits filed all the way around. I hope the statute of limitations did not fall out because this was horrific.